Presentation of Huddle Up Nittany Lion fans on your local public television station has been made possible in part by Everett Cash Mutual Insurance Company, insuring restaurants and other commercial businesses since 1913. ECM Insurance Group of Everett.
McClanahan's Penn State Room, offering a complete assortment of Penn State gifts and apparel. Downtown State College or online anytime at PennStateRoom.com.
Inspirations, Milroy, Pennsylvania, featuring Penn State Corian tables and house signs. Information at 717-667-6314.
Welcome to Lash Building, and while Beaver Stadium's the home of Penn State football Saturdays during the fall, this is the day in and day out home of Penn State football, where the coaches work every single day getting ready for games. Hi again, everyone. I'm Steve Jones, and welcome to the Huddle Up Preview presented by our good friends from Inspirations, McClanahan's at ECM Insurance. The Nittany Lions at 7-5 on the season, winners of 4 of their final 6 games, will take on the Gators of Florida, who went through a 7-5 season of their own. For Urban Meyer, his final game as the head coach of Florida, it's an interesting time of transition for the Gators with Will Muschamp on the horizon, set to take over. For Penn State, they're looking to come out of 2010 and set up 2011. And with that, we bring in my broadcast partner for the past 11 seasons on the Penn State Sports Network, Jack Ham. Jack, great to have you with us again. And let's talk about this preparation for Penn State. How important, from your personal experience, is that 2 weeks of practice, like an extra spring practice that they get for a game like this?
Well, first of all, this is huge for the Penn State team for the number one reason. This is a young football team. It's not a veteran team. And this extra practice for wide receivers to work on their technique, for the linebackers and defensive backs in technique as well, and some of the things that we're breaking down throughout the course of the season, getting good angles on when you're making tackles as a linebacker. And so these extra practices for this kind of a football team, a young football team, to get better, Steve, it's invaluable for them right now. And I'm sure that, the bowl game and the reward for going to a bowl game is a big thing, but this is a huge thing for a football team that, as young as it is, can just get better.
Now that we've talked about the practice part, let's talk about the game part of it. Florida plays 3 guys at quarterback, and they'll break the huddle, Jack, with all 3. Trey Burton, along with Jordan Reed, and the guy that usually is the trigger man, John Brantley. As a defensive player, what do you have to think of as you look at that quarterback spot as to which one's in the game, running the show behind center?
Well, that's the thing. Normally, you get into a rhythm on defense of a quarterback you're playing against, and you get a feel for what he's trying to do. When you have this kind of a situation where 3 quarterbacks who do their strength is different for each one of these guys, and a drop back quarterback is probably the easiest thing for you defensively to defend. Your front 4 knows where the quarterback's going to be, and you try to get to that point and rush the passer for the most part. But when you have a quarterback who is mobile, runs out of the pocket, containment is such a critical thing. Making sure you keep the guy inside the pocket so your pass rush isn't as strong. The idea, and the cadence as well. I mean, you try to get a feel on defense, especially for the linebacker who's on a blitz situation, to get a feel for the cadence of a quarterback. It's going to cause a lot more problems for the defense, meaning you got to defend a lot more things. And again, you need that extra work and practice time to try to defend all of those different things, because, like I said, you don't know which quarterback is going to be in that game and which one ends up making plays, will have a hot hand, and so you got to defend it all.
Thanks so much, Jack. And don't forget, Jack will join me for the broadcast on the Penn State Sports Network beginning at 1 o'clock. 11:30 will be our airtime from Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. With that, now we go to head football coach Joe Paterno, his press conference and comments on the showdown with the Gators.
Joe, what were your thoughts when you heard that Urban Meyer was going to resign after the Outback Bowl?
I hate to get into the Urban Meyer thing. To be frank with you, I have tremendous respect for him. And if he wants to do what he's doing, then I think he's entitled to do it. I got asked that question 100 times yesterday down in Tampa. And what I told him was, when I was Urban's age, I had a couple opportunities to leave, do some other things. But when I was his age, I was just a small, short little Italian with a long nose, and I didn't have a lot of opportunities. He's a big, good-looking guy. He's really a good family man. and he's got a lot of things he can do.
So those are the thoughts of head football coach Joe Paterno. Now let's go to the other side. Urban Meyer. It's been another interesting month for him, no question about it. He decided one day that he wanted to rebuild Florida, and then 48 hours later he decided to resign. Why?
Why? That is fairly simple. I think sometimes we make it far too complex. At the end of the day, I'm very convinced that you're going to be judged on how you are as a husband, as a father, not if you know how many bowl games we won. And I've not seen my two girls play high school sports. They're both very talented Division I-A volleyball players, so I missed those 4 years. And I missed 2 already of one away at college. And I was blessed in a family that never missed anything. And so I can't get that time back.
Everyone's talked about the motivation for Florida with this being Urban Meyer's final game as the head coach, but he also knows motivation has to happen internally. So what does he see as the prime motivation for his 7-5 football team?
Certain players that it doesn't matter. They just love the game of football and an opportunity to play. I think it always helps when you get an opportunity to play at a school like Penn State, because that's instant respect. That's instant. The minute you say the words Penn State or Coach Paterno, I mean, you know you better be ready to go. So certainly there is a little bit of that you have to deal with, but I'm pretty happy to say on my team it's not that much.
And we welcome everyone back. Steve Jones joined by Mark Brennan from Fight On State. And Mark, you look at the dynamics of this game. Penn State gets the 2 extra weeks of practice with 59 freshmen and sophomores. What can that mean?
I think it's great for this team. They were able to get into things up here in Happy Valley before heading down to the bowl game. And that's a time when they were able to work with a lot of these sophomores, redshirting players, freshmen. It's just a great experience. I also like the fact, Steve, that this is a primetime, big bowl game. I mean, Penn State at 7-5 got a great situation. New Year's Day Bowl, 1 o'clock, ABC, Monday Night Football crew. I just think it's a great experience for these players to be in this sort of atmosphere, and it's going to be a great learning experience.
A lot of talk about speed over the years in these bowl games. Penn State's played Florida State, Texas A&M, Tennessee, USC, LSU, and the speed has been negated. But this is a team, obviously, with Jeff Demps, who's the NCAA track champion in 100 meters. They can run.
When you talk about the SEC, you're always talking about speed. The one thing I like is that the players at Penn State are having some fun with this whole thing about how they're slower than all of these SEC teams. They've proven over the years that they can run with these teams. They do have a lot of healthy respect, and I think when you look at Florida, yeah, there is a lot of speed, but Penn State has some speed of its own, and I think this is going to be a good opportunity to showcase it.
The presence of Matt McGloin, what has he meant to the development, not only of the offense, but maybe to this team's presence?
Yeah, I think everybody focuses on the stats, the hard numbers, and I think it goes beyond that. He seems to me to have developed into kind of a charismatic leader. When you lose a guy like Darryl Clark, that was the one thing a lot of us were worried about going into the season. Rob Bolden did a great job when he was in there, but he's a true freshman, has only been on campus for 6 months or whatever it is, and I think McGloin was able to come in, play well, and also bring that leadership, that charisma, and I would look for good things for him in this bowl game because quarterbacks have been able to do some decent things against Florida.
Interesting that Florida's a team that has produced 101 points off of takeaways this year. If I were to tell you that stat, you probably would think, wow, the Gators must be 10-2, 11-1. They're not. And that's because they turn it over. The 25 turnovers, and 7 of the 25 are in the red zone. What does that tell you?
Well, I think it speaks to the struggles that the offense at Florida has had. I mean, when we talk about leadership at quarterback, Tim Tebow obviously brought a lot of it. Everybody looks at Tebow's numbers and the awards and everything else, but they clearly were unable to replace him. Brantley's a guy who's done some good things. They've brought in Burton off the bench as more of a running quarterback, but I just don't think you lose that sort of personality, and that's been one of the real issues. You talk about red zone, Penn State, we talked about it all year, Steve. Their problems scoring in the red zone, taking care of business. Florida's been almost, kind of the same kind of deal.
Well, it goes back to Matt McGloin, though. Since he entered the lineup, Penn State's red zone fortunes have completely changed. They're now a really good red zone offense. The other part, too, is Chaz Henry won the Ray Guy Award as the nation's top punter. But when Caleb Sturgis went down as the place kicker, he had to replace him, and they missed 4 field goals in the red zone as well.
Well, and they stopped even kicking field goals toward the end of the year. When you talk about punting, he's leading the nation in punting yardage, but they're also, as a team, leading the nation in net punting, which is a huge stat. Both of those things are really big. Also, they have great return men. I mean, the one Jenkins, they have a bevy of Jenkinses on this team, but the one kid is a great kickoff return man. But I do think that when you look at that field goal kicking situation, position. Colin Wagner been real solid for Penn State, did an outstanding job in terrible conditions in the Cap One Bowl last year. That's a real advantage for Penn State, but Florida has its edges in different areas too.
Okay, let's break it down in terms of what are some of the keys, what swings it one way or the other.
I think one of the real keys for Penn State is ball control, chewing up clock, using as much clock as you possibly can. That's been kind of an Achilles heel for Florida this year. In terms of defense, do not allow the big plays. And, you know, we saw toward the end of the year that Penn State started making some big plays defensively against Indiana. That's one of those things that I think they just have to keep doing. It's going to be real key to have Mike Motti back in there, because to me, they're a different defense when he's playing linebacker.
And with that, it's time now for our prediction from ECM Insurance. And Mark, for the 13th and final time in 2010, and maybe for the first time in 2011, your prediction.
I'm going to go Florida 21, Penn State 23. I think the difference is going to be Colin Wagner. We talked about it a little bit earlier. How many times in bowl games have we seen field goal kicking, special teams come into play? I think both defenses will play pretty well. They're rested up. The offenses will get a little bit going, but overall, I think the team with the better field goal kicker is going to win. And to me, that's Colin Wagner.
Urban Meyer's last game, people have talked about the motivation, but you have an entire staff that's looking for jobs right now. There's split time between trying to find their own jobs and take care of themselves, which they should, but also trying to get ready for a game. So how does that play out? I
think the natural inclination is to think that everybody's going to rally behind Urban Meyer, but we've seen Penn State play teams in coaching transitions before, and it hasn't always worked out that way. You know, this is a team that lost 5 of its final 8, really did not play well at all in its season finale against Florida State. So I'm thinking that this is going to be, Penn State carries the momentum in this game, and I think that's going to carry Penn State over the edge, along with Colin Wagner.
Mark, thanks as always.
Yep.
Our special thanks to Inspirations, McClanahan's at ECM Insurance. And for Mark Brennan, Jack Hamm, and our entire crew, I'm Steve Jones. Thanks so much for joining us on our Huddle Up preview.
Presentation of Huddle Up Nittany Lion fans on your local public television station has been made possible in part by Everett Cash Mutual Insurance Company, insuring restaurants and other commercial businesses since 1913. ECM Insurance Group of Everett.
McClanahan's Penn State Room, offering a complete assortment of Penn State gifts and apparel. Downtown State College or online anytime at PennStateRoom.com.
Inspirations, Milroy, Pennsylvania, featuring Penn State Corian tables and house signs. Information at 717-667-6314.